Monkey D. Luffy is known for humiliating opponents throughout One Piece unless he's fighting one of these 11 characters. For someone who's a shonen protagonist and really should have the thickest plot armor in history, Luffy has actually been defeated at least 11 times. One of them is a major surprise, one is almost as controversial as the Zoro vs Sanji debate, and the remaining ones all follow the same 4 simple step formula that makes One Piece so amazing. Like the time that Luffy got defeated and almost captured by his arch nemesis Smoker. Before even properly starting his adventure, Luffy traveled to an island called Loketown, where Goldie Roger, the first pirate king, was both born and ultimately executed. Here Luffy runs into the marine captain Smoker, who recognizes him from his first bounty poster that he received after beating Arlong. Smoker is the first character introduced with the powers of a Logia Devil Fruit power that turns his body into smoke, making him completely immune to any physical attacks. As a result, Luffy has no chance whatsoever against the Marine and is defeated in an instant. He's only spared because his father Dragon steps in to stop Smoker, and as a result, Luffy is then able to proceed unscathed with his crew towards the Grand Line. Now, the pattern that Eiichiro Oda, the author of One Piece, uses here are the same 4 steps that he uses with every single opponent that has been able to beat Luffy. He first introduces the villain in a really impressive way, showing just how powerful and superior they are, and then have them defeat Luffy. In this case, Luffy not landing one single hit on Smoker and being pinned down. Then in the second step, Luffy barely manages to escape the situation, like here for instance with Dragon stepping in to save his son. In the third step, this gives Luffy the necessary drive to grow and be creative, either as a person or in terms of power, to overcome this newfound obstacle. In this case, Luffy learns that he can't beat every single enemy he faces, and that sometimes you simply have to run away and come back stronger. Which then leads to step number 4, Luffy succeeding in his original mission, like in this case, making it successfully to the entrance of the Grand Line. You can see the exact same formula with Luffy's third major defeat in the story as well, when he encounters another Marine, this time one of the 3 most powerful Marines in the story, the Admiral Aokiji. And he is one of the most powerful characters in the entire story, period. Aokiji, just like Smoker, is a Logia fruit user whose entire body is made out of ice and who can't take physical damage without an ability called Haki that Luffy only learns way later on in the story. And so with Luffy having no way of dealing any damage to his opponent once again, he is frozen solid by Aokiji, step number 1. However, as we learn a little bit later in the story, Aokiji is more of an ally than an enemy to the Straw Hat crew. He just wanted to test Luffy's resolve and if he was actually worthy of watching over Nico Robin, a girl who has been chased and hunted her entire life and that Aokiji had saved as a kid. Therefore, he doesn't actually capture or kill Luffy, but spares his life, which is how Luffy, step number 2, escapes here. Now, even though Aokiji tells him that he should send Nico Robin away because she will only bring a lot of trouble to him, again, this was all a test, Luffy has already accepted her as part of his family, step 3, and is able to proceed towards Water 7 to get his ship fixed, step number 4. And speaking of Water 7, Luffy has his butt kicked again there by another official from the world government, which is the organization that leads the Marines and rules the entire world, who in this case want to capture Nico Robin for her knowledge about the lost history that they're trying to keep hidden from the public. The antagonist here, the government agent Lucci, has eaten the leopard devil fruit that gives him the ability of the animal plus superhuman strength and endurance. And so the leopard's incredible speed combined with the 6 special techniques known by each of the government's top secret agents makes him the first opponent in the story that Luffy could actually touch in theory, but who's simply physically too fast and strong. And as a result, Luffy is utterly humiliated in this fight. The difference in power is so bad that Lucci has no interest in finishing Luffy off at all and instead simply tosses him out of the building before he leaves the island with the captured Robin. And therefore, Luffy survives once again. This time, in order to save his crew member, he trains hard and develops 2 new techniques for his devil fruit that allow him to defeat Lucci in one of the best fights of the series. And as a result of this, he ultimately manages to liberate Robin in my personal favorite moment of the entire show. Now, you might or might not have realized that I actually skipped one of Luffy's major defeats here, against the warlord Crocodile during the Alabasta saga. And Luffy didn't just lose once against him, but actually twice. Just like Smoker and Aokiji, Crocodile is also a Logia Devil Fruit user who's made of sand. Thus, once again, Luffy's punches do nothing and he is gruesomely impaled. This This time he only survives thanks to Robin's help, who is still an enemy at this point, but I do hope that you see just how nicely all of these defeats are kind of linked together here. In this case, simply getting stronger won't be enough, so Luffy has to actually use his imagination and creativity to overcome this enemy. He has noticed previously that his fist covered in his own blood can actually deal damage to Crocodile, since Sand's weakness is moisture. So for his rematch, he brings a barrel of water to the fight and manages to take Crocodile out that way. This allows him to save the kingdom of Alabasta and also free Nico Robin from her dark past as well. Dark, like the dwelling place of the 5th character that manages to defeat Luffy. And this one might come as a bit of a surprise even if you've already watched up to this point. I mean, I definitely didn't remember that this happened at first. On Thriller Bark, Luffy faces Gecko Moria, one of the 7 warlords of the sea who are powerful pirates working with the government that has the unique ability to steal people's shadows and infuse dead objects with them. Now, this defeat was really sneaky, but as Luffy and Co were infiltrating the spooky castle, they got trapped in a room with countless of Moria's zombies who had already managed to take Zoro's shadow away. And while Luffy was busy facing the zombie who now had Zoro's powers and personality, he was overwhelmed by tiny little spider mice zombies who managed to seal him inside a coffin so that Moria could now steal his shadow too and infuse it into the ancient giant ores. Now, to be completely fair, this was not exactly a 1v1 in this case, but Moria's entire character arc was centered around letting others do the dirty work for him, plus it was his devil fruit ability that took Luffy out, so I do think it counts. Luffy once again managed to escape, however. He infused himself with hundreds of shadows and becomes Nightmare Luffy, still one of the coolest forms he has ever taken in the story, and manages to take back his shadow and defeat Moria. But while this defeat might have been the most surprising that Luffy has ever experienced, it is nothing against what happens next. Traveling from Thriller Bark to the next island called Sabaody Archipelago, Luffy and the crew experience their most crushing defeat yet. Luffy attacks one of the world nobles, the rulers of the world, who was trying to buy his mermaid friend Jamie as a slave. Now, punching a celestial dragon is the highest crime anyone can commit in the One Piece world, and so the government sends over another one of the 3 top marine admirals. This time it's not Aokiji, but someone called Kizaru who ate the light Logia fruit, once again making him an enemy that Luffy can't beat. But on top of that, there's also Kuma and Sentomaru who decimate the entire crew. Now at this point, Luffy doesn't know yet that similar to Aokiji, Kuma actually does this to protect Luffy and the others from being captured or killed by Kizaru. And so that way, Luffy once again escapes by being teleported to another island. However, interestingly enough, in this case, the growth from this defeat doesn't really happen right away, making this a curious exception to the entire list so far. Instead, Luffy finds out that his brother Ace has been captured and is about to be executed by the Marines. So he goes off on a mission to free him from the hellish government prison called Impel Down. The main antagonist here is Magellan, the warden of the prison that has eaten the poison fruit that allows him to produce and manipulate any poison imaginable. Magellan stands out from the list in his own way, as he not only defeated Luffy without any effort at all, but also Blackbeard and his entire crew as they were infiltrating the prison. In this case, Luffy only barely manages to survive his deadly poisoning thanks to you being subscribed to the channel and also his newly made ally Ivankov, whose abilities save Luffy's life here. At this point, Luffy becomes immune to pretty much all poisons hereafter and manages to make it out of the prison and towards Marineford, the Marines headquarters, where his brother has been taken to be executed. However, here at the Marine headquarters, amidst the biggest war in the history of One Piece so far, Luffy experiences the biggest defeat in the entire story, which results in the lowest point of his journey, to the point where he almost gives up his will to live altogether. Now, just to put it out there, Luffy isn't defeated only once during this war. He's surrounded by characters way out of his league, but through sheer will alone and with the help of all the newfound allies that he's made, he actually manages to free his brother from his shackles. However, ultimately, Akainu, the strongest and cruelest of the 3 admirals, is the one defeating Luffy here. Akainu, who has this powerful, crazy magma Logia ability. Now, the only reason his life is spared once again here is because Luffy's brother and Jinbei both sacrificed themselves for him. It's the first and only time so far in the story where Luffy doesn't succeed in his mission during an arc. He wanted to save his brother and fails, which as a result automatically makes it the most impactful event of One Piece to this day. day. However, Luffy did learn from his defeat. It inspired him to become a better captain who can properly take care of his crew, and taught him that you can't always expect things to just miraculously work out without any consequences. And even better, to give Luffy a major payoff and win after this gigantic loss, after a 2-year time skip period full of training and new abilities, Luffy's now not only able to beat the pacifista that he had so much trouble with on 𝙬𝚎𝚐𝚐𝚝 before, but he's now also able to use Haki, the ability necessary to fight against Logia type users like Smoker, Crocodile, or any of the 3 admirals. Which makes the next character that manages to defeat Luffy just the more surprising. The crazy scientist Caesar Clown, who rules over the apocalyptic island Punk Hazard, is another Logia fruit user. His body is made entirely out of gas. Now, Luffy is able to survive Caesar's initial poison gas attack, ethically quite questionable by the way, thanks to his poison immunity that he gained from the prison. But then, the scientist removes all the air from the room, since oxygen is also a gas, and thus makes Luffy pass out. Very clever fighting, I gotta say. Now, Luffy once again manages to get away easily with the help of his new ally, the warlord Trafalgar Law. Luffy has now learned from his earlier mistake, and this time takes out Caesar in a quite satisfying manner. Not quite as satisfying though as against this next enemy that managed to defeat Luffy here. This is probably the most controversial and maybe most unique candidate on this list. Charlotte Katakuri is the strongest pirate in the crew of the Emperor Big Mom, one of the 4 strongest pirates who rule this part of the world. Now, Katakuri has eaten the mochi mochi fruit, mochi being sticky Japanese rice cake, and his fruit is pretty much the same as Luffy's rubber abilities, only that Katakuri is way better at using it. He also has way better Haki abilities, and overall simply outclasses Luffy by miles. He completely dominates their fight to such an extent that Luffy gets as frustrated as we haven't seen him for a long time in the story. He even escapes in the middle of the battle to think about his strategy and how he can actually catch up to Katakuri. Katakuri, meanwhile, slowly starts to like Luffy and pushes him to grow stronger until he's actually powerful enough to defeat him. Now, there is a very strong argument to be made here whether or not Katakuri actually let Luffy beat him on purpose or not. But it is without any question that Katakuri beat Luffy initially during the first half of the fight, and that the battle followed the exact same 4 stages as all the other defeats. As a result, Luffy learns to use his Devil Fruit way more creatively and even gains the ability to look slightly ahead into the future. But surprisingly enough, this is nothing against what Luffy learned from his battle with Kaido, one of the 4 emperors, said to be the strongest creature on the planet. And Luffy's introduction to Kaido is a defeat that's over with a single hit. I mean, Luffy might never have been as outclassed as in this fight. He has to go on an entire training arc and escape from prison in order to even take Kaido on a second time, and is beaten again. This time, Luffy is saved by his Devil Fruit powers and his will to live. As a result, however, he grows immensely as both a leader and a fighter, to the point where he emerges as one of the strongest people in the entire story. So really, there aren't too many characters left now who would have a chance of beating Luffy. This guy, however, is a completely different story. Blackbeard is the main antagonist of the story so far, and will be Luffy's biggest obstacle in the way of becoming Pirate King. If you want to know just how powerful he is and why he's able to wield not 1 but 2 Devil Fruits as the only character in the entire story, well, you can watch this video right here next.